All right, everybody. Well, we are back. Was it 6 this past week, Jacob? I always
Yes,
get
it
the get it,
was.
I get them mixed up in my head every week, but I
Yeah,
was right
week
this
six.
time. Week
Week
6
six.
of Tri-State football in the Cincinnati area, and of course, as always, for Tri-State football Monday Night Rewind, I am Daniel Kuhn and my co-host Jacob Berkemeier. And we're going to be talking about all the action from the past week, talk about some upcoming games, and hopefully get you everybody out of here pretty quick because I don't know if anybody's willingly wants to watch the Bengals right now, but secretly we all do. So we'll try to get everybody out of here as close to kickoff as we possibly can. Um, Without further ado, Jacob, I think since we are kind of keeping our eye on the clock a little bit, we'll
Yeah.
just go right into it. Last week we did a little bit of a different. It was a new segment last week, and we kind of highlighted some of the teams we don't normally get a chance to talk about on this show. And I think we should do it again this week because I think the reception was positive, and I think it's a plus side to cover as many teams as we possibly can. Um, for starters, I think for both of us, we both had a school each that we wanted to just give a quick shout out to because they
Yep.
got big wins this past weekend. Much needed wins. Jacob, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. The Coleraine Cardinals finally snapped their 27 game losing streak dating back to the 2022 season, where they beat Sycamore 34-24. Quarterback Roman Gar threw for 371 and 5 touchdowns for the Cardinals. So hopefully for Coleraine, things kind of start swinging on the positive side of stuff and they can start building something. I know they really have struggled since the departure of head coach Tom Bolden. And that happens when you got a staple there he was there for close to 20 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not that many, but he was
Long
there for a
time though.
really, really long time. And anytime you have a coach of that caliber kind of leaves the program, in some upheaval. And they were able to finally get their first win in 27 games. So just wanted to shout out Coleraine. I'm sure a lot of those guys are happy, especially if they were on the team 3 years ago and kind of gone through this entire stretch. That one's got to feel good. But with that,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And it I think and I'll talk about it a little bit briefly here when I talk about my team, but when you are especially in Colerain's situation, right? And like you said, it's tough sledding when you lose somebody who's been a part of the program as long as Coach Bolden was, and they had as much success as they did under Coach Bolden. And he leaves and you have to kind of start from scratch, right? And it can be some tough sledding, and I know from from experience because I too, admittedly, was on some pretty bad. I don't want to call Coleraine bad, but I too was on some football teams growing up that did not win any games, and specifically my middle school teams. But my point is when you're struggling to get back in the win column, and it's gotten to the point to where it was for Coleraine, that win feels like a gazillion pounds off your shoulders
yeah,
as a coach, as a school, as a program. I mean, this could be the turning of the tide, right, for Coleraine. They finally got it out of the way. It's the monkeys off their back. They can go out and start playing a little bit more loose, a little more fun. There's not that pressure anymore, right? You're not going to go into the game going, oh gosh, feel like we're just going to lose again. They took care of
yeah.
business. It was a conference win.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big confidence booster for that program, and I'm happy for them. And on that note, it's a little bit different of a scenario because Greg Shoemaker would have to just explain to me how this worked because I was like 98% sure they used to have a football program, but it's all kind of wonky. So we're gonna go over to Kentucky, as everybody knows. Kentucky's kind of my backyard at this point, which it actually technically really is because I live in Kentucky, but St. Henry District. I'm going to call him St. Henry just for the sake of less words. But so St. Henry District, a brand new football program this year, first year in existence. I believe it's compromised of a couple different schools in the area. Um, so obviously it's not as big of a team. They probably don't have the numbers in terms of like roster size, and they're also starting from scratch, right? And when
Yeah.
you start a new program, it's tough to get kids to sign up. I feel like, especially if there hasn't been a football program there for a while. So you look at those upperclassmen, it's like, man, I haven't played football in 3 years. Well,
Yeah.
you got an opportunity to play now, and they got their first win in, I guess, program history on Friday night, which is a big. I think it's a very big deal. Pardon me as I
Hmm.
look for. I just had it. It's disappeared. KHSAA's website has pulled a fast one on me.
Yeah, as they
Um,
always do.
yeah, no kidding. I had it on my phone too, so I'm just gonna use my phone. For the sake of everyone not watching me bumble and stumble through the next 5 minutes as I try to find it. But so they're in the Class 2A in Kentucky, and they took down Galatian County on Friday night, 21-12. First win as a program, and just quickly highlight some of the players on that team that did propel them to the win. Um, Gunnar Irvin, freshman, 6 for 11, 42 yards. So you look at the roster. It's okay. There's a lot of underclassmen on this team, right? As one would expect with a new program. Caden Kunstick, he's a senior. He had 26 rushing attempts for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Wow.
So big game for him. Shout out to, I believe they're called the Crusaders. I want to get that right. Yes, the Crusaders. So shout out to the Crusaders, St. Henry District, first win in program history. There was a district win, a regional win for them, so they can put the 1-0 up in that column, right? Don't need to worry about what happened at the beginning of the year. You got your 1-0 in your district, 1-0 in your region, but it's a big deal for that program. So I want to shout out them. And
I
then,
think you made a really good point too, with just like how hard it is to get guys to like come
mhm,
out and play and form that team. And I think, getting that first win, and they have a freshman starting at QB too. So that's got to give you hope if you're in that district. And I'm
mhm,
sure there's a lot of buzz in that district kind of around their team, probably a lot of excitement. But, for some of those feeder schools that are going to St. Henry, you know, it's if you're seeing guys making plays and they're getting wins, hopefully they can build that program up a little bit. And you kind of have a freshman that's probably going to be your guy at quarterback for the next 3 years after this. And, hopefully you're looking to kind of develop, along with the rest of the team, but,
yeah,
actually kind of build a nice little program there. And you kind of got a cornerstone guy, even though his stat line, 6 for 11 for 42 yards, not eye popping or anything, but anytime you got a freshman out there running around, I mean, you know, it's tough for them. I mean, the size and the physicality of some of the teams that you play, if you're playing somebody who's 18 years old and you're 14, there's definitely a big,
right.
there's a big,
That's
difference there. You don't
That's a big
see,
gap, man. That's a
yeah,
tough. It doesn't sound like much. I think as you get older, like, oh, 4 years, but I remember when I was a freshman, and I
yeah,
remember what guys who were seniors looked like, and I'm like, good God
right.
Almighty, right? So exciting for St. Henry, for the Crusaders. Looking at their schedule, they have Owen County at home next weekend, and then they have to go on the road to play Beechwood. So not an easy schedule by any
No,
means, but hey, look at it this way, right? I mean, it may not be the prettiest of seasons, but they've got that first one out of the way, and they're underclassmen that they're putting out there right now are going to be tough. They're going to be tested by the time they get to
yeah,
be juniors, seniors. So just remember about St. Henry District. All right, for the sake
absolutely.
of time, Jacob, I think you wanted to mention Baden, correct?
Yes, one other team I just wanted to mention, Baden, in the GCL co-ed. They are 6-0 to start the year with about a 140 point differential, give or take, and they just beat CJ 45-14. And I mean, as of right now, Baden, Alter, and McNick all are 1-0 in conference play, but Baden 6-0 overall, and Alter and McNick are both 4-2. So I just kind of wanted to just, they've had a really good year. They started the year off beating Hamilton 38-20, then steamrolled Dixie Heights, and they're going to have a really good finish to their season. They play Alter and McNick last 2 weeks of the year,
Mm,
so I have a feeling Baden could possibly be 8-0 walking into those two games to kind of seal their fate and make sure that they win the GCL co-ed, but just kind of wanted to highlight the season that they're having, because I know we spend a lot of time on the GCL South, but not as much time on the GCL co-ed, and a lot of those schools are, they're still in our tri-state area that we cover, pretty much besides like CJ. CJ's only Dayton school, I think, out of
I mean,
all of this.
Baden's kind of in the
But
middle.
they're Hamilton.
Yeah, they're kind of in the middle, but yeah, they're still in our tri-state area for sure.
But yeah,
and they're always tough. Just in that GCL co-ed, so it's definitely worth giving them a shout out. And also shout out to McNick and Alter. Those are two other schools from that conference that are usually pretty solid. And
I watched Alter play last year, and they had a really good, really solid team. Good coach. They're a well-coached team. So wouldn't be surprised if they make some noise come playoff time too. But yeah, I just think if you're, at Baden or fan of Baden, they've definitely had a really good season so far. So just kind of wanted to highlight that before we got into our games of the week.
I just wanted to quickly, and then we'll move on to our games of the week. Just very, very briefly, a conference we don't cover very much on this show, the Southern Buckeye Athletic and Academic Conference. So, as I love to say, the SBAAC. They have that. So those are kind of the schools out east-ish, I guess you would consider that, from like city of Cincinnati is concerned. They've got three teams that are all 5-1 or better. Clinton, Massey, Goshen are both at 5-1. And then Williamsburg currently 6-0. All of them undefeated in their conference. Now they've only played one conference game, but still. But I just quickly wanted to touch on specifically Goshen and Williamsburg, just based off of their score differential, their point differentials. Goshen is currently sitting at 251 points for, 110 points against, and then Williamsburg is sitting at 218 points for, 59 points against. And they don't play each other because they're in the SBAAC is separated into two regions. But very, very solid football being played in that conference this year. So just briefly wanted to quickly touch on that.
Yeah.
And then
I actually, last week, I actually recorded some of the pregame show for Friday night with Greg. And we talked to Williamsburg head coach, I believe it's Nick Ayers. And, I mean, he was just talking about how awesome this season's been and some of the guys that he's coaching. They're a really small school out there. I think D4 or D5. And not very often at those schools do you get Division I talent, but they have a couple guys who have been getting some D1 looks.
That's awesome.
I think he was just kind of talking about that. It creates a lot more excitement for some of the other guys as well, other players. Sure. You see some college coaches coming in, it makes you want to go harder and, play your heart out and everything. So, they, like you said, their point differential is pretty crazy. It's 218 to 59 right now, 6-0. And Clinton Massey, I know we talked about a lot last year, actually, because Clinton Massey last year was just beating the brakes on people.
Very good. Yeah.
I mean, they're 5-1 as well. So I definitely think it's good that we highlighted them, because it's definitely one conference that it's like, I know I'm not going to personally cover many games with our kind of game of the week schedule. I've been at another GCL game this week. So it's like, I think it'll be my third or fourth GCL game this year. And
I'll be at another Kentucky game. So
it's like, that's kind of where our assignments take us. And, so it's hard for us to truthfully evaluate some of these teams when we've never seen them play, but by looking at some of the stats and everything, and like I said, just talking with Coach Nick Ayers, it's like you find out some things and you understand that they're building a solid program over there and have a solid program. So
yeah, for sure. That's some great points, Jacob. And glad to know that you've talked to the Williamsburg coach, because it definitely seems like they've got a good squad down there. And it'll be interesting to see where the rest of their season goes. All right, so let's just hop right into our featured games. As Jacob already alluded to, I believe you're doing Elder at St. X, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
However,
just making sure.
yeah. However, I was not game last week because I had other obligations. I had a wedding on Friday night, but Actually, crazy upset from out of Elder here. I mean, 6-0. Yeah, I see that headline now. First time since 2001. I did not know that. Um, but and it's so you just wouldn't have expected it out of Elder this year. I don't think, especially with some of the guys St. X has on defense. And I think last week I said the score prediction for me was like 13-10 or 17-10. Ended up being 23-13. So still was a defensive battle. Oh, nice. You got the highlights pulled up. Perfect. But St. X didn't score until the fourth quarter. So
Which I
um,
guess
I
they.
guess that's yeah, I guess that's one of the scores that they're showing. A little go route to number 88. Um, who is that? Is that
Jackson Frey. Oh, you're talking about
yeah,
88. It's I
yeah.
know his name. Shoot.
I think it's
Uh,
Christian McDonald
yeah,
because he's the only one with a touchdown there, and then yeah, Jackson Frey running one in as well. Um, but I mean, the big story I think was just Elder's run game. Honestly, I mean, Tommy Becker, 16 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown that you see right there, kind of getting up and over. And then Caden Depp, who I've alluded to a couple times throughout this show. He is a dual threat guy.
mhm.
He had 9 carries for 61 yards. I think Elders run a quarterback draw every year since Doug Ramsey's been there, which
Yeah,
is close to I think 30 years at this point.
yeah, it's
But
been a
I
long
mean, I
time.
know when we were in high school too. I mean, it was like they'd have somebody come in second quarterback, and Michael Bittner was like the Wildcat quarterback when they had Neiman. Neiman was QBing for him. Can't remember if Scotty or Danny, but so it's literally like every year they just seem to find another dual threat, hard nosed runner that can play the quarterback position. And E-step against this very impressive St. X secondary and linebacking group, 18 for 21. So only throwing 3 incompletions. That's very impressive. And then no turnovers. And X didn't really have any turnovers either. And it's not like Jackson Frey had a terrible day either. 11 for 16, 243 at 40 yards on the ground. They just could not convert, getting into the red zone and getting scores early on. And I mean, if you're Elder, you got to be very happy with that. Actually, I take that back. St. X did fumble.
They fumbled on their
Uh,
own goal line.
they fumbled twice. So I don't know who forced the fumbles. They don't have that marked, but they did fumble twice, and Elder recovered both of them. So I think that's really what you're looking at is, and you said they fumbled on their own goal line as well. So you're setting. Was that you mean like coming in to score, or like
It,
they were pinned? So Elder
so
got really good field
I
position.
wrote the article for the game, and I read it as the Elder forced the fumble on the Bombers' own 1 yard line.
Wow. So yeah,
So
literally just pretty much walk in touchdown
I
right
don't think
after
they.
that.
I don't think they scored off of it though, which is the crazy thing. I think they might have gotten a field goal, but still, there were definitely a few momentum shifting plays in this game, I believe. And I don't mean to like interject and take
No, you're
over.
good.
Just
You're good.
I believe Elder had a block punt as well at some point. So that you kind of could look at those plays, right? Because these are two very evenly matched teams, right?
Definitely.
And I think that
And
speaks to we talk about it all the time, but it speaks just to the competitiveness of the GCL South.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, anytime you're getting contributions and special teams and then forcing turnovers and then doing a good job taking care of the ball, I mean, I think when you go up, I mean, they got up, let's see, what was it? Um, they were up 16-0 going into the fourth. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
if you're E-step and Coach Ramsey kind of calling the game, it's like all you're preaching is like, don't be stupid. Like let's just make the
Yep.
right play, the right read. Um, our defense is playing lights out. If we have to punt, whatever. And E-step did a really good job taking care of the ball, and I think that's ultimately that's why they ended up winning the game. Also, fun fact, Daniel Vollmer was the one who threw that
Mhm.
touchdown, not Jackson Frey. So
Yes.
I will be curious if X starts to use Vollmer more on the offensive side of the ball. I know
Mhm.
he's going to Vanderbilt as a linebacker, but last year he was close to 1,000-yard rusher. Kind of
He
playing
was.
both sides of the football, and I think it's definitely like a spark that their offense could use, just kind of having a big playmaker in the backfield
Mhm.
and being able to shift him around. I think that might help with a little bit of their offensive struggles. But we'll see how things kind of shake out the rest of the year. It's not like X is
Yeah.
falling off or anything like that. They'll still be a very tough opponent to play come playoff time, and I
Mhm.
have faith that they'll figure their things out, during these next 3 weeks of the regular season. So I don't think there's a ton to worry about as a X fan. It's just a rivalry game there, and Elder ended up making a couple big plays.
Yeah, it strikes me that, from at least from what I understood about the game, it struck me that for whatever reason, I think the difference in this game, and I'm not talking down. I'm not like Jake Britt is St. X's tailback, and
Mm-hmm.
by all means, he's had a wonderful career for the Bombers. He's been their lead back for I think 2 or 3 years now, and he's always been a very good cog in that offensive unit. But it just feels like this year they've just been missing something, at least from the running
Yeah.
game. And
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact that Elder Tommy Becker is really really good, and he is a perfect complement to Anthony Step back there in the backfield. It just feels like that was like kind of the difference in this game. I think, but if you're looking for like because I think these teams are so evenly matched that you're kind of looking for like that. Okay, what set from a team perspective? Because obviously plays like a block punt and fumbles are momentum changing, right? But every game, every team has something different about them that sets them apart from the other,
Yeah,
right? And I think
absolutely.
I think that Saint X is just missing a little bit in the running game right now. And if they can get that figured out, they're because I know for a fact Jackson Frey and Cam Taylor and all those guys that are out there running routes for the Bombers, they're good. But it
Yeah.
kind of boils if you hit your run game struggling, that affects the passing game too, right?
Well, and
So
especially against the defense like Elder as well,
mhm,
where it's like, and you saw in that game, Elder had a lot more success running the football. You're able to control the game a little bit more,
yeah.
control time of possession, things like that, and that's really critical and important in this in that conference. But
And you also have to remember too, right? I mean, listen, we see guys like Matt Ponatowski did it, like made a living off of doing it last year, which was an outlier. But like, this is high school football, right? I mean, you guys aren't going to throw for 500 yards every single game like you
yeah,
would see in college or the NFL, and that's not a negative thing. It's just you have to. I feel like in order to be a successful high school football team, especially in not just the GCL South, but even really in the city as a whole, all the teams we cover,
and the state,
yeah,
honestly,
yeah,
yeah, it's
right.
just
Yeah. I mean, probably the country. I mean, you got to have a
yeah,
solid running attack. And I think that the Bombers will figure it out because I do know that Jake Britt's a very good tailback. And like you
mm,
said, maybe bringing Vollmer in and letting him play a little bit of a maybe it's like an H, but not an H back, but like a
no,
running
yeah,
back
literally
slash
H back,
hybrid.
tight
Yeah,
end.
yeah.
He can play all over the
Because,
field. He's an
like you said,
athlete.
he was almost 1,000 yard rusher last year. There was actually I covered that game they had against LaSalle last year. They started him at quarterback. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? So it's like he's definitely got the offensive talent. Now I don't know if that was the plan this year was to kind of have him focus primarily on defense, but as we saw from the 68-yard touchdown pass, he's that spark like you were talking about.
Yeah, for
All right,
sure. But
so
with all that being said, I can pass it back over to
you're good.
you
As
for
per
your game.
usual, I'm talking with my hands, and then of course I'm yapping about the game that's not even my game. Um, so I talked about him last week. Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy, aka CHCA, have had a really really impressive year to this point, and we touched on them last week in our opening segment where we talk about some of the smaller schools. And honestly, when I started researching them last week and got to know their team a little bit a little bit. I started to get like interested. Okay, if there's something cooking over here at CHCA, something's going right. And you look at their schedule and it's like, oh my gosh, okay, Harrison's a good football program.
Yeah.
We've talked about them on here quite a bit. And that was a tough. That was really the test, at least for me. Now, obviously, there's more games to be played this year, but that's kind of the test for me. It's like, okay, CHCA, let's see what they've got, and they took care of business. They beat Harrison, high flying game, 31-29. Did not go to overtime, and I'm going to tell you what the difference is here, Jacob. Harrison's quarterback Brady Lawhan, 13 for 16, 199 for 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
CHCA's quarterback Griffin Rydner Richard, 23 for 38, 361 for 4 touchdowns. Mr. Richard, I'm assuming his last name's Richard, or Rydner Richard. I don't know that for sure. But his stats this year, he's thrown for over 1,000 yards, averaging 9.5 yards per completion, 63% completion percentage, 18 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He's got a quarterback rating of 178.3.
That's crazy. And you said he's got four interceptions on the year?
4 interceptions on the year.
And that's crazy because 3 came in this game.
Yep.
So
I was going to get to that.
yeah, it's nuts, dude.
It missed. Excuse me, Griffin Rydner Richard Sr. Stands at 6'5", so big kid. He's a name worth keeping your eye on, I think, for the rest of the season. He's had an incredible season. I know we talk all the time about Ponatowski and Jackson Frey and Owen Scowl from Anderson, but definitely make sure to remember this name because he's having an incredible year. And then not just past the quarterback, let's talk about the receiving. Alex Wells, Nolan Lum, Max Laban, Aiden Meyer all had touchdown touchdown receptions in this game. All had receptions of over 30 yards. Alex Wells specifically went 9 receptions, 112 yards and 1 TD, so about 12.5 yards per reception. So the Eagles are quite literally flying high. They have a really, really impressive offensive passing attack. And if you look at their rushing attempts, their rushing stats, I mean, their leading rusher was Richard with 19 yards. So it's very clear that this is what they're going to do. And I think that, between, Richard and the rest of that offense, I think they've got the pieces in play to be one of the better offenses in the city this year. And an impressive win for them against Harrison. I think that really solidifies them as the top dog. I mean, we've talked about North College Hill as well. They're also 6-0. Yeah. So make sure, don't forget them. But they're 2 different divisions within the conference, right? So CHCA and North College Hill are both kind of controlling. But this really just, I think, that's a really big win for a smaller program. And
against a Harrison team that literally went to like D2 regional finals, I think last year. Yes. They've lost to LaSalle, so it's not like Harrison's a bad team at all. And just looking at the box score a little bit, there's a couple things I wanted to add. I think a huge reason why CHCA won is their kicker was lights out. Hit a 38-yarder and went 4 for 4 on extra points, and then in turn, Harrison's kicker went 1 for 2 on extra points. And they ran a lot of 2-point conversions too. So
yes, they did. That's a good point.
Having somebody, and then the final score of the game is a 2-point game. So you wonder how many points are you kind of leaving on the table if the kicker matchup there, and then the fact that the turnover battle was almost about equal. Harrison threw 4 interceptions, CHCA threw 3 interceptions, and then also lost a fumble. They also got a fumble. So Harrison had 5 turnovers, and CHCA had 3. And then Preston Flick also ran for 226 yards for Harrison. So complete just like differing styles too. Harrison running for 335 yards and CHCA running for 36.
Yeah.
It's like that's crazy.
I think when reading the box score and kind of like learning about CHCA and stuff and figuring out, okay, wow, they've got a really, really good offensive attack. You kind of forget about Harrison's. By no means is Harrison. Yeah. Their season is not over from this. They'll obviously recover, but I just we talk a lot about the schools that we don't get a chance to cover, And I just thought this was such a big win for a program that you don't really hear about very much in the
Mm-hmm.
tri-state, right? So it's impressive to me that they are taking care of business in their own way. Obviously, I think if you're CHCA, you'd like to cut down a little bit on the turnover, maybe shore up that rush defense. But I mean, still to come out of there with a win. And then, of course, as Mitch, I almost called you Mitch. I have a friend named Mitch, and I just almost called you Mitch. But the kicker for CHCA, his name is Mitchell. Shout out, shout out to Mitchell Rottinghouse, who went 4 for 4 extra points and 1 for 1 from normal field goal
Yeah.
in a normal field goal situation. So,
Yeah.
all right,
Well, I
enough.
think we can move on. I got the Blitz
Okay,
5 top 25 pulled up here. We are going to try to be not sure how much we're really going to talk about games because I know kickoff for the Bengals are starting here soon, like literally in 1 minute. So we will just kind of just go through and highlight a couple changes that have happened in this week. You can kind of see starting off right here. Elder leapfrog to number 2. So Moeller still the top dog.
took care of
You
LaSalle
know,
quite easily.
took 42-7. And Elder and Moeller play this week, which I will be at that game. So
That'll be a good one, Jacob. I'm a little jealous. At the pit,
yeah,
that'll be a good one.
yeah. I'm happy it's at the pit, not at like West Claremont or
Mount
something. It's a
St.
much
Joseph.
shorter. Yeah, it's well, Mount St. Joe's about an equal drive to the pit for me,
Okay, fair enough.
uh,
Not
but
West
yeah,
Claremont again.
the last Moeller game, yeah, it took me about an hour and a half to get out to West Claremont. That was a hike. But yeah, Anderson's doing Anderson things, just steamrolling 63 to
Yeah,
nothing. That was our Blitz 5 game of the week last week. You see that 40.2 average margin of victory. Highlands and Princeton at the 4 and 5 spot there. And Princeton's got Hamilton upcoming. That should be another win for them. Trying to kind of complete their mission of winning the GMC title this year. And then Highlands plays Covcath, which
I'll
that
be
will
at
be a
that.
huge game.
I will be at that game.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I mean, talk about a rough couple of weeks for St. X. I mean, you go Moeller, Elder, and then Louisville Trinity.
Defending state
3
champion
straight
Louisville
weeks.
Trinity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get any easier for St. X. Then Kings continuing their very strong season. They're coming in at 7. Um, they have Andrew Lyman playing really well. And yeah, they played Lebanon, who Lebanon's got a solid squad too, and they're ranked number 20. I saw them play earlier in the year. Lebanon's got a good team. So that should be a oh wait, no, that was last week. My apologies. Kings plays Little Miami this week, but they beat Lebanon 38-20.
Yeah.
So big win for Kings in the ECC. Winton Woods creeping up the rankings. Finally cracked the top 10. They beat Little Miami last week and now played Loveland this week. Taft,
took
which
care of Withrow.
dude, Taft has a squad. I wanted to talk about them tonight, but there was no box scores uploaded because that was another team that I'm forgetting their head coach's name, but I talked to him with Shu, and he was talking. I think they have about like 8 D1 guys, and they have a sophomore receiver who's number 17 in his class, 5-star recruit. So they have some guys over at Taft for sure.
Yeah.
And they play Hughes, and I mean, they absolutely stomp Withrow 39-0. So I think Taft is going to be a legit problem come playoff time.
Problem is the right word because
Yeah,
as of right now, I'm not sure who's standing in their way.
and I don't see it either.
They're reaching. I'll quickly say this: Taft is reaching Anderson levels of they're just mowing everything in their path down.
Like dominance for their division and
Yes.
conference.
Yes.
So, and then kind of just moving on, trying to get through this quick here in the next few minutes. LaSalle, they have Roncalli, which is in Indiana. Not super familiar with them, and
They
played.
Sorry.
Wait, no, you go. No, go ahead.
They play Roncalli, I think, every year, and
Yeah,
they're not a bad team, but I think that LaSalle should be able to handle their
get the
business
win.
there. Yeah,
Yeah, and they're also coming up a couple off a couple rough games with Elder and then
Moeller. Yeah,
Moeller back to back. So and then Ryle coming off a win last week. They play Campbell County this week, so should be a good one there. Covcath, we kind of already talked about them against Highlands this week, but they won against Central. Um, Not sure what the score, maybe 21-4 was what it was supposed to be. I'm not really sure. It says 2-4. Oh. Uh, but then Lakota West at 13. They
they
beat
got
Middletown last week, which we talked about that game. We were seeing if Middletown would kind of come through, and but I think it's good for Lakota West that they bounced back because they really needed it.
definitely.
And then they also have Coleraine upcoming, so if you're Coleraine, enjoy the win while you can. I think Coach Bolden's come in to get some revenge this week. And then Lakota East at 14, and they have Middletown. So Middletown gets the treat of playing back-to-back Lakota schools. And then we talked about Baden earlier in the show. They beat CJ, and they got Fenwick this week. Middletown playing Lakota East. So they got to get right game, got to try and get back on track. And then Mason and Fairfield are both matching up against each other. That's our 17 and 18. And then East Central here at 5-1. They just beat South Dearborn 66-6. So
That's an interesting scoreline. Wonder if that score
yeah,
got me.
yeah. They beat their last two opponents 111-6.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
East Central's rolling,
Yes, for
and
sure.
definitely a team to pay attention to once the Indiana State playoff starts. And then kind of rolling out our list, you got Cooper, who beat Connor last week, and they play Dixie Heights this week. Lebanon, who lost to a good King's school, and they are probably looking at a get-right game against Milford, who's 1-5 on the year. And, we talked about Taft, Withrow. I don't think there's a lot of shame in losing to Taft with the
No,
type
not
of
at all.
squad that they have. And they also have a get-right game against Woodward, who's 0-6 on the year. And then Beechwood. So Beechwood won 68-6 last week. So I think they're kind of into the good part of their schedule where they're
Mm-hmm.
playing a lot of conference schools and people at their same level finally, not all the big dogs in Kentucky. And last two, but not least, Indian Hill beating Taylor last week, 52-8 or 52-0, and then they play Finneytown this week. Indian Hill's 5-0, 2-0 in their conference, and then CHCA 5-1, but they beat Harrison last week. So huge win for CHCA last week, kind of like we highlighted. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I
Nice to
think
see them. Nice to see them get some love in the top 25 for
yeah,
sure.
and I think it's tough when you do the top 25 rankings because you want to include some of these smaller schools, but
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to say like you know CHCA and Moeller. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
there is a difference
There's
there,
there's a
but it's
there's a
like
def there's definitely a discrepancy, I think, there,
but
and
you have to acknowledge some of these
yeah,
team seasons that they're
for
having,
sure.
even if you look at the top 5 or 10 schools and you're like, well, that doesn't measure up to that. So, but it's CHCA, Indian Hill, Beechwood, all three small schools, all rounding out our top 25 and good programs. But
Absolutely. I think it was a little bit of icing on the cake there for me after I ranted about CHCA for like 10 minutes straight to see them in the top 25. But no, it's like we talked about, and I think that's kind of becoming a little bit of like an underlying theme to this show as the year goes on. Is that while we could sit here and talk about Moeller and Anderson and those schools 24/7, which by all means they absolutely deserve the right to be talked about as much as they are because they're that good. But be able
mhm,
to highlight some of those schools like CHC and North College Hill and this SBAAC, my favorite conference acronym. Um, it's always nice to be able to touch on those schools, and I think we're going to continue to keep doing that this year. But we're also going to keep continuing to talk about the schools that absolutely deserve to be talked about. Well, anyways, I think that's pretty much going to wrap us up for us here tonight. It's 8:22, at least according to my clock to my right, which means the game should be going on. So, like everybody else, I'm going to go sit down and watch the Bengals probably lose. But we'll hold out hope.
Hey, they're on the 8-yard line, so let's wrap up the
wonderful.
sponsors. Yeah, but yeah, so had to pull up the game cast real quick. What's happening?
Just go get a quick little double check all live on air. As always, we appreciate everybody listening to us, watching us tonight. If you want to catch our show after the live version of it has aired on Monday nights, you can always check it out on all of our social media platforms. It'll be listed. It'll be in the feed on there. So Twitter or X, whatever you like to call it, Facebook, Instagram. We even have a live stream on Twitch if you like Twitch. And of course, if you want to check out Jacob and I's content throughout the season outside of the podcast, you can get it all at TriStateFootball.com. And then if you want to listen to the podcast version of this show, you can find it on all major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you may find your podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyways, everybody have a great evening. Enjoy the Monday Night Football game, and go Reds as well. We can't go sign off without the show, without giving the Reds a shout out. And we will see everybody back here on Monday night next week. See you guys.